In February 2011, shortly after my husband and I got married, we moved into a 3-bedroom townhouse. It wasn't right away that we realized we weren't its only inhabitants. Our first experience we didn't even realize until looking back months later. It was late one night, just before midnight. My 3-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son had their own rooms upstairs. My husband and my room was right at the bottom of the steps. We were heading to bed when we hear my daughter yell, "Get out of my room," and little feet pitter-pattered down the hall to my son's room. So we both went upstairs, me to get after the boy for being out of bed, him to check on the girl. Both kids were sound asleep and my son's bedroom door was closed, which we would have heard closer if it had even been open in the first place. We wrote off the experience. My daughter's always yelled in her sleep and the footsteps could have been from a neighbor. But a few nights later, we started hearing things in the kitchen in the middle of the night. Things rattling around, falling off the counters, drawers opening and closing. At first, we thought it was the kids, but when we go out there, no one was there. We checked their beds and they were sound asleep. The dining table chairs would move in the night, and anything we'd ever leave on the table would be on the floor when we woke up. We'd hear footsteps upstairs, and sometimes we thought we heard whispering. My husband would try to stay up at night in the living room to watch, but on those nights, nothing ever happened. Eventually, he decided to set up a camera. We didn't have any fancy equipment, so he used his HTC phone, cleared all the memory and left it plugged in and on record from about midnight until whenever it cut off the video. For weeks after this, I made my kids sleep in my room with me. We stayed in the townhouse for lack of other options. We heard these things almost nightly, but nothing bad ever happened. My husband is a skeptic. For the most part, he still is. He swears there has to be a logical explanation for what we saw in this video, but I've had these experiences before we were married. For a while, I thought it was something that had attached itself to my daughter. She's told me since she was 18 months old that there was a man in our house, old house, not the townhouse, named Charming. Here's a little more into that story. The house we were moving into was small and crudely put together. It seemed as though the original owner had built it himself. The floors, cabinets, and walls were not completely straight. The original hardwood floor was cracked and filled with crumbs and dust. Needless to say, it was creepy right off the bat. Living alone was new to me. I had always lived with my family, friends, or my children's father. But recently I had left him, and me and our 2 small children moved into our own home. The first night I spent there, I tucked my daughter into bed and had an uneasy feeling about the closet in her room, but I wrote it off as first night jitters and climbed into bed myself. The unsettling feeling of being watched continued with the closet in her room and also the closet in my own room, the basement and the kitchen right in front of the basement door. Whenever I was in the kitchen, it felt as though someone was standing in that doorway watching me. When I opened either closet, I also felt piercing eyes on me. Going down the basement to do laundry was the worst. I always felt like someone was in the back of the basement near the crawl space watching me, and then it would follow me, so close, as if it were breathing on my neck, up the stairs until I shut the door. Still, I justified it, telling myself I was just afraid of being alone for the first time. 2 weeks into living there, my 18-month-old daughter told me she was afraid of the man in the kitchen. She pointed to him and said his name was Charming and that he lived in the basement. Weeks later, on the drive home from my parents' house, she asked me if we were going back to his house. I told her we were going back to our house. She said, no, that's his house. At this point, nothing strange had happened. No swinging cupboards or doors left open. Just eerie, uncomfortable feelings. But that night when I tucked her into bed and turned on her radio, like I always do, the volume was so loud it startled me, and instead of music, it was deep, rough male voice. Demonic, almost. I listened for a moment, but I couldn't understand what it was saying, as if it was in another language. I quickly tuned the radio to another station and spent the rest of the night trying to justify the voice. Maybe it was a different electronic communication device getting its radio signal mixed up. After that, nothing else happened for months. My husband, boyfriend at the time, was staying with us for a while, and I had explained a little about Charming and the things that I felt, but he never believed in any of that stuff anyways. Weeks after, I came home from work, and he was outside waiting in the driveway. He said he didn't feel comfortable going back in alone. My bedroom door never stayed open. It didn't close all the way, but it swung back and stayed half open. I'm sure it was because the house was so lopsided. So we kept an old boombox radio in front of it to hold it open. He told me he placed the boombox in front of the door, walked through the house and went outside for about 5 minutes, and when he came back the bedroom door was closed all the way and the boombox was on the inside. Days later, I was in the shower and I heard someone walk past the bathroom door 3 times. Once from the bedroom to the kitchen, then back to the kitchen once more. When I got out of the shower, I went into the bedroom where my boyfriend was twisted up in all the blankets, sound asleep. I shook him awake and asked what he was looking for in the kitchen. He said he hadn't been in the kitchen.
He was asleep in bed the whole time.
Later that week, as he was leaving for the store, I watched the car pull out of the driveway and speed down the road. I headed into the basement and was putting laundry into the dryer when I heard footsteps upstairs walk from the front of the house to the back and then again to the front. When I went up there, no one was there. Shortly, my boyfriend returned and I asked him if he had come back and then left again.
He said he hadn't.
Throughout the next couple of weeks, we would hear small noises at night. The magnets from the entertainment center cabinets clicking together and apart, but not opening. The TV turned on a couple of times. There were footsteps in the attic, small things that didn't faze me. We tried to take pictures of eerie places around the house to see if maybe something would appear, but to no avail. It wasn't until my boyfriend moved across the state that things started happening again. It was my birthday. My plans got ruined and I was sitting home alone, sad, with all the lights off. I started hearing this very loud banging sound. At first I thought it was fireworks because it was July, but the sound was far too loud and close by to be fireworks. I figured out that it was coming from the attic. Nothing too strange ever happened in the attic before, just footsteps every so often, so I was slightly alarmed. It sounded like a hammer banging on wood. After a few minutes, the banging stopped, and it sounded as if something large and heavy was being dragged across the floor of the attic to the opposite side of the house. Moments later, footsteps walked from that side of the attic back to the side where the banging had been. The process started again. Banging, dragging, footsteps again and again. I went outside and called a friend over, but by the time she got there, it had stopped. A week or so after that, I was lying in bed alone, and I felt like something was standing close to my bed. This has never been in my room when I have been in bed before. It was probably the creepiest moment out of all the things that happened during that year and a half. That was also the last. I moved out of the house 2 months later. I've been back a couple times. No one lives there still, and during the day you can look and see in all the windows through cracks in the shades. At night, if you look in from the side of the living room, you can see a light flickering like a flame from under the door of what used to be my kids' room.
I say hunted, not haunted, because a ghost is in fact hunting me down.
It's been 7 years since I last saw it. It was shortly after my father died when this ghost, which had previously been securely tethered in the family house, managed to get out of its shackles and follow me around. My father kept this ghost because it supposedly gave him some financial luck. Although, if you ask me, that luck was barely anything at all, seeing as we were still dirt poor and in debt at the end of all of it. His gambling problem and impulsive purchases of vintage sports cars he obviously couldn't afford did not help. Neither did my mom's fondness for scams and pyramid schemes. It had been an uncontested notion that the family would not have gotten through most years without it. I have never asked my parents how this ghost came to be in their lives or what deal it was that they made with it. Throughout my entire life, it had been part of the home, a presence that I wasn't allowed to talk about or question, much less object to. To be fair, it's not that dangerous. Although I guess dangerous is subjective depending on who's looking at what. As over time, one might get accustomed or tolerant to what would otherwise be considered dangerous by others. A slap or a scratch here and there, the occasional slamming of doors and throwing of objects around the house, and explosions of rage every now and then. Unlike other ghosts, this one likes to talk a lot. And unlike other ghosts, this one doesn't scare. Instead, it drags its subjects deep into hopelessness by sweetly mumbling vicious melodies of pain in their ear. Whether you listen to it or not, its mere presence slowly sucks the life out of you bit by bit until such a point where you can't even get out of bed. This is evidenced by the fact that my father had been plagued by melancholy for most of the years I had known him. From watching him wither away, I got the impression that he did not live a life, but suffered a long, stretched-out death. For decades, I watched him stay in bed all day, watching TV as his life slipped away. And I myself, having grown up in the same household, also began to suffer the disease. All this had been an unspoken family secret that even our closest relatives had absolutely no idea was there. They would visit for holidays, and me, my mom, my dad would all put on our best holiday cheers. We are a humorous crowd as well, and our quick wits really help complete the show. During these occasions, the ghost disappears until no outsider is left in the house. And then it goes back to whispering. I had always known that I was next in line for the repayment. Since I was 12, the ghosts have made it clear to me. It demands life as payment for the debt. You owe me, it whispers. The worst part is that my mom supports it, demanding that I do my duty. She wants me to take on living with the ghosts, as she and my father have. You won't even know it's there, she reasons. But she and I both know fully well that I would, as this ghost dominates the house it lives in. I had always rebelled against this imposition. I felt that it wasn't fair for me to have to pay for mistakes I did not make, to inherit a debt I never agreed to. But this ghost does not listen to reason, and it definitely does not negotiate. After my dad died, I told the ghost that I refused to be a casualty in whatever deal it brokered with my parents or grandparents or great-grandparents. I wasn't sure how far up that history went. It began its usual whispers, and I started challenging its claims. This time it did something I've never seen it do before. Its mouth stretched out downwards and it began to wail. The wail evolved into one long, seemingly endless scream. And just like that, it had reduced me, a fully grown adult at this point, into a trembling child. In that moment, I felt as if the ghost had leached several years off of my life within a matter of seconds. It was a demonstration of power. Its whispers were a courtesy, but it can do far more if it wanted to. I received that message loud and clear. I ran out of the house as quickly as I could and swore never to go back. It was in the wee hours of the morning, and I went straight to a friend's house. As the adrenaline from the confrontation subsided, the stings from my injuries surfaced themselves. It took a bit of time to realize I had gashes and scratches across my back and arms.
Trouble at the home, I told them.
I didn't really have much at the time, but my friend offered to pick up whatever little I had left in the old house. Since then, I've moved a lot, trying to outrun the ghost. It usually works, but only for a little while. The ghost moves by following people who come to the old house, hoping they will lead it to where I live. And eventually it succeeds, usually through relatives checking in on the house and later on paying me a visit. And discussing my whereabouts while in the old house. As soon as I realized this, I made a habit of packing up my stuff at the faintest sound resembling its whispers. I had started cutting cousins off because of this. Because no matter how I tried to explain what was in the house, they never believed me. And worse, they kept guilting me into coming back to the house to deal with things. The house is crumbling down and needs upkeep. My mother misses me, and the usual scripts. Sometimes the guilt trip is so bad that I'm almost convinced that I made this all up in my head, that even if the ghost did exist, I was overreacting and should go back to the house just the same. I've been fortunate enough to snap out of it in time and keep my distance, but now, on my fifth move, it has found me yet again. I can see it in the corner of my eye, creeping behind trees whenever I come out for a cigarette on the balcony. I can hear its whispers from outside the yard. Even though these are more prominent at night, when everything else goes quiet, I'm sure as hell it's also there during the day, drowned out by all other sounds. And despite having a fence, a gate, and several yards between us, I can feel it taking back what it's owed, in minuscule portions, but with all certainty. One way or another, the ghost will find a way to take back what it deems its property. True enough, its gloom had started to take over the surroundings. The skies, the trees, the river had turned a certain tinge of gray. My senses are turning dull. I managed in time to make arrangements to move to another country altogether, hoping it doesn't gain the power of flight. I'll be looking for old scripts documenting methods for vanquishing this type of ghost. Recommendations welcome, just in case it does. If all else fails, I take comfort in the fact that I have no children to inherit this curse.
And for those whose homes are lorded over by a similar type of host, I highly advise you run as fast as you can, as far as you can, as soon as you can.